Welcome to Talking Halos. Derek Ciapola with my co-host, my partners in crime, Jared Timms and Nate Green, here for our Anthony Rendon uh, funeral edition. He's not dead, but you might as well be. Is that a wrong thing to say?
Probably.
Probably. I don't mean it like that. Don't be offended. It's just in terms of baseball, it might as well be. So, I don't have it right. No, it's not working, guys. Jared, not working? Not
What?
working. Okay.
I mean, I'm constantly I feel like it's the MLB trade deadline. I feel like it's draft day. I'm on the phone right now. I'm sorry.
Trying to
Totally
find the
messed up.
politically correct way to basically says we're not surprised Anthony Rendon is out again. But here we are as we digest the news that Anthony Rendon had to undergo hip surgery and he's going to be out for the long term. I'm going to go to I'm going to go to Jared first on this because I just want Nate to wait a minute. I want him to bake in this a little bit. Jared, what are your thoughts on Anthony Rendon?
Um, I I'm not surprised at this point, unfortunately. Um, I don't like the stigma that he doesn't want to play baseball. I don't like that. I mean, I've got to believe the guy still wants to play baseball. But when you've gone through as many injuries as he has, and I mean, dare we say unluckiness that he has in his Angels, I mean, he's played 250 something games as an Angel over the last 5 seasons. I mean, what can you do about that? I mean, it's not even like, and he started his Angels career off very, very well. He was a top 10 MVP candidate in that 2020 season. I know it was a shortened season, but he was on pace to be probably a 5-win player that year. And I mean, if baseball plays 162 games and he has a 5-win season, I feel like we may be talking about something a little bit different. But at the end of the day, it sucks. There's a lot of questions stemming from this. I mean, is he going to retire? Is he ever going to play in an Angels uniform again? Is he going to ever play baseball again? I can't tell you. I have no idea. The one thing I will say, it's hard to leave $70 million on the table. So I would be no matter how much money you have, it's hard
He's
to
set up
walk
for
away from
life.
$70 million. All right, like free
He's set up for
free
life.
$70 million. Like it's going to be hard to walk away from that, whether you've
It's not
made
free
billions,
though.
whether you've made billions of dollars or not. It's hard to walk away from a $70 million. Whether it's free. Okay, fine, it's not free. He's got to work for it a little bit. He may never play a game again. So at that point, it's free, but it's hard to walk away from $70 million. So I know there's a lot of people asking, man, is he going to retire? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? I I'd be shocked if he was retired if he retired just because of how much money's on the table. Um, but I mean, hey, you never know. It could help out the Angels. Maybe there's an under the table deal with Artie, like, hey man, I'm willing to give you this amount of money if you just go ahead and retire, and we take off the $35 million a year off the books. So who knows? But man, how unlucky can somebody be? Jeez, I mean that's brutal. I know there's a lot of people that don't like Anthony Rendon, and the media gave him a very negative persona from probably the beginning of his tenure with the Angels, and he didn't help anything out either. But man, that's extremely unlucky what he's had to go through. So yeah, I mean, it sucks, but at some point you got to think about moving on too. I mean, I think the Angels need to dip into the Nolan Arenado pool here pretty soon because at this point, Yoan Moncada has only played two more games than Anthony Rendon has over the past 2 years, so you don't know what you're getting out of Yoan Moncada by any means. And behind Moncada, who is it? Cole Fontenot, JD Davis. I'm going to start throwing out
Rangifo kind of.
Denzer Guzman, maybe Luis Renifo. Um, but I mean, you got to look for somebody else. I was feeling a little bit optimistic heading into this season. Like, hey, I mean, maybe you're able to get 60 games out of Rendon, 60 games out of Moncada, and then hey, you string together 42 games from 8 other players, and that's the way it is. But Angels got to go find a reliable third baseman. I think I just said shortstop, reliable third baseman that's going to be able to go out there and play at least 120 games for you, just in case Yoan Moncada can't do it. Sorry, that was a lot. Do a lot on everybody's plate there.
Nate?
Yes. I don't like the notion that he's been unlucky. everyone sits here and goes, Anthony Davis has been unlucky in the NBA. Anthony Davis doesn't do anything in the offseason. Anthony Davis shows up and takes 2 months off and then shows up a couple weeks before and gets his work in, and then he gets ready to go. As
Mhm.
a guy who has said that he doesn't love the game, he has said that. We're not going to sit here and say he doesn't want to play baseball. He has said he doesn't love baseball. What?
Has he said he doesn't love baseball, or has he said that
Yes.
has he said he prioritizes other things ahead of baseball,
he
like
he
family and
came
other
out and
things?
said that the only reason he played baseball was because he was good at it, not because he loved baseball. That got him drafted was because he said I was good at it, kind of
I
similar to what Ty Buttrey said after he retired. I didn't love baseball. I was very good at it, and I kept playing because either money or whatever. So Anthony Rendon has said that he doesn't love baseball. He was very good at baseball. I think when you have that attitude towards work, it is very hard to do the things that you need to do to be a professional baseball player to play 162 games. The old notion of like, it's not lucky, it's hard work. I think that's what it is. Like, I don't know how much he does in the offseason. So for us to sit here and say like, oh, he's been unlucky, I don't know. I want to know, like, does this guy work hard in the offseason? Does he do everything? Second, according to that point, it is incredibly, incredibly hard to rehab from another surgery. This is his third surgery in the last 4 years. It is incredibly, incredibly hard to rehab from something like that, especially since this setback is supposedly from he's going to have a similar surgery to what he just had, and now you're going to ask him to rehab again to be ready for the 2026 season. I don't see him doing that. I see him sitting here and going, you know what, Artie, I'll take my $38 million this year and I'll call it quits. Like, I don't need the extra 38 after that. Um, and for a guy that has made almost $300 million in his career, I just don't see him sitting here going, you know what, like, I need that extra 70 or the extra 38, whatever it is. And you got to remember, we live in California, so that 38 or that 70 is really like 20 that he's getting after Scott Boras takes his little bit, the government takes his little bit. So I just don't see him sitting here going like, I'm going to go through this really tough rehab to maybe play another game. And even if he does, there's no way he plays another game in an Angel uniform.
Nate, for a person as realistic as you are, most of the time, I'm incredibly surprised that you would go that route with what you think Anthony Rendon would do, man. Because you just made the point that he would do the exact opposite. Between taxes, between all this money going here, and he's not getting as much as he thinks he is. That's all the more reason to go to Artie and say, okay, you know what? Go ahead, buy me out of this so I get something else. And
Well,
I don't see
Artie
him
could
just
literally just
retiring.
sit here. Artie could literally just sit here and be like, who cares? Like, I'm not going to buy you out. Like, there's no reason
As
to buy
opposed to
you
what?
out.
As opposed to what? Him retiring? He's not going to retire.
Yeah.
I'm just simply saying, I think it's incredibly naive to say he's just going to retire. No, he's not going to retire. He's going to go try and get that last bag before he walks out the door. I do think, however, I think the odds of him playing their games with the Angel are low. I really do. I just don't see. I agree with you on the fact that that's a surgery that's going to require a lot of time away at rehab. Does he have the will to do it? I just don't. I don't see it. I don't see how.
So
Yeah,
then what's he going to do if he doesn't have the will to go through that again? What's he going to do? Because
Try
the
and negotiate
Angels,
a
if
buyout.
the Angels are going to ask for him to do his rehab. Like, he's either going to have to work his butt off to be ready to go at some point in the next, you know, either at some point this year or some point next year, or they're just going to say you got to retire. Like, we're not paying you. We'll put you on, the suspension list or whatever, and make sure that he doesn't get his money because he's going to have to work his butt off for that $70 million.
I don't
Jerry,
think
what was
I,
saying?
I don't think the PA would MLB PA would allow the Angels to put an injured player on the reserve list. I could be wrong. Find a time when that's happened that somebody's gotten hurt and just because the team didn't want to pay for it. I think this is I don't think we see Anthony Rendon play another game in an Angels uniform. I'll just kind of be like blunt with that. But I don't see him retiring either. I mean, maybe for us peasants here, it's leaving $70 million or whatever after taxes it is on out there is a huge deal. And maybe for him it's not, but I mean, I just don't I don't see anybody leaving $70 million, $40 million after taxes out there for like even if it's not for free, even if he does have to work a little bit. Like I mean, here, I have a very good example. What's Evan White doing right now?
He's trying to play, but
He's
they're
trying to play. He's
yeah.
been he's been rehabbing, he's been doing his thing, or has he just been sitting in Arizona not doing anything because he's had 18 injuries? I mean, the Evan White thing is very, very similar to what we're probably going to see with Anthony Rendon. Just the Anthony Rendon thing is a heck of a lot bigger because he's making $35 million more. I mean, this happens a lot. Like we see this happen quite often. Bottom
And we
line
see
though,
people leave money on the table as well.
Not very
I don't
often,
think
though.
we've ever seen somebody retire. I mean, Prince Fielder is probably the only guy that has ever really retired, and leaving that amount of money on the table just because he had career-ending injuries. I'd be shocked if there was anybody other than that. And maybe there's some guys in the minor leagues and things like that. But again, to leave $70 million on the table is insane. In the story here on this one though, I would be shocked to see Anthony Rendon in Angels uniform playing on the field ever again. I'd be shocked if he retired, and the Angels need to go get a third baseman now at this point. They need to go find somebody to play third base.
Let me agree with that, but you're just talking about knock on the Arenado door.
Yeah.
I mean, what's that going to cost him?
I mean,
Money.
nobody seems to want Arenado. I mean, there are teams that want Arenado, but there are teams they're saying like, hey, we're you're only taking him if we're going to only take him if we give up Marcus Stroman or if we give up DJ LeMahieu or I mean, it'd be interesting to see what because I guess the Red Sox had something lined up to get Arenado if they didn't get Bregman. That's the only reason why I bring up the Arenado thing is because now Bregman is with the Red Sox, and the Red Sox were the only logical team that made sense. Arenado, and I'm sure people are sitting here like, oh, Arenado wants to go to a winner. Arenado said that he would go play in Anaheim. I mean, it's not a winner, but he said he would want to go play in Anaheim, and that's one of the 5, 6 teams that he said he would okay a trade to. I don't know if he will, and I don't know if the Cardinals would find a deal with the Angels, but that's one of the 6 teams that he okayed a trade to, and he's already said no to going to a winner in Houston. So clearly, winning isn't the only thing that matters to Arenado. It means something, obviously, but I mean, if he wanted to really go win, why isn't he going to play in Houston on a team that's made it to the ALCS 7 of the last 8 years or whatever it is, you know? So yeah, I don't know what it would cost to get Arenado. I don't think it would cost very much. It seems like they really just want to get the money off the books. And I mean, hey, if for some strange reason Anthony Rendon does retire, the Angels all of a sudden have $35 million in free money to go get somebody. And Arenado, I think, only costs about $15 million. And he's been a very consistent player. He doesn't. I think it's maybe more than that, in between 15 and $20 million that he's supposed to get paid over the next 2, 3 years. But I mean, it's a good stopgap if the Angels decide to move Christian Moore to third base, or if they, draft a third baseman or something. I don't know, but they need a third baseman to go play 100 and whatever games because at the moment Yohan Moncada is there, and again, he's played 102 games over the past 2 years. So
I mean, Nolan Arenado's under the hood numbers suggest
he's
pretty quick
he's the best.
deterioration here.
He's the best option right now. Unless you're going to go
But
sign some
he's
guys
the
to
best
minor.
option, sure, but he's also going to cost you something for what purpose? What's the purpose right now? They're not competing this year.
We'll see. We'll see what it actually costs the team. I think it very similar to the Cody Bellinger trade, where it's like, everybody, it's going to be a top 100 prospect. Oh, it's going to be multiple prospects, and then all of a sudden, the Yankees give up a 24-year-old relief pitcher to the Cubs, and it was like, oh well, that was not. I would have done that in a heartbeat to go get Cody Bellinger. So I think that's the type of trade that we're looking at for Nolan Arenado, and I mean, still a very very good player, still a Gold Glove nominee, still plays third base very very well. I mean, still 100 plus
Platinum
WRC
glove
plus guy.
nominee.
So
What do you think, Nate?
I don't have a problem with Arenado. I think he would make sense. Obviously, it would depend on what the Angels have money wise to play with. Um, one of my big things with this pitching rotation, they got a lot of guys that pitch to contact. Hendricks, Soriano, Anderson, all those guys are pitch to contact guys, and their defense looks very, very subpar. Um, Bringing in Arenado would make the defense just that much better on the left side, especially. So I think it makes sense, but I agree with Jared. I don't see them having to give up much. I know like the Red Sox were talking about like Blaze Jordan, who's like their 12th to 15th prospect, depending on who you talk to. And then some other like lower level guy. And it's like, okay, like the Angels could do that easily.
That's probably on
Um,
depending on money too, you know.
I think it could have been like if the Red Sox were adding Yoshida or not, like it changed some things of like who they were giving up. But like, yeah, I don't see the Angels having to give up anything crazy for him. It would just depend on the money thing. And I do think he wants to come home. He's born and raised in Southern California. Like that is a big deal to him, is either coming home or playing for a legitimate winner. I know you that the Astros I just don't see him wanting to play in Houston. Actually, he's already said no to that. So there's really only one other team that could want him, and it's the New York Yankees. And just depends on what they want to do.
Well, in other news, just moving on, Zack Neto says he's feeling great. We're not too sure about opening day though, guys. So, same with Nate. How are you feeling about Zack Neto being ready for the season?
I mean, it's good news that he got good news. I don't see him being ready for opening day. I think the best case scenario is, he's back by the end of spring training, gets a week or two of at bats, and the Angels go, you know what, like it's not worth it to push you. We're gonna leave you here for a week or two, get some more ABs, and then he's ready to go the second or third week of the season. So that would be best case scenario. The tough thing is if it is that quick, do the Angels decide to just stick with the 40 man and go, you know what, we're gonna roll with Kingery or Parrish for those 2 or 3 weeks instead of dipping into maybe a Tim Anderson or someone of that realm. And it depends on who plays well in spring training. We really don't know. It's still early. Um, but yeah, I think that's good news that Neto's going to be back rather quickly into the season, because I know as Angel fans, we go with the worst case scenario, and it's like, ooh, we really don't know anything about Neto. Watch him come back in July, and it's like, okay, it doesn't sound like it's going to be that long, so that's good news.
Sure.
Um, yeah, it seems like good news. It was kind of depressing a couple weeks ago hearing that I think it was a couple weeks ago hearing that Neto, might not be ready for opening day and things like that. Big piece, probably the best player on the Angels last year. So to lose that type of guy, especially early in the season, you can't win a championship early in the season, but you can definitely lose a championship early in the season. And while I don't expect the Angels to be pushing much for a championship this season, I would like them to be somewhat competitive, and Zack Neto definitely makes them more competitive when he's on the field rather than when he's off the field. I want to say it was kind of similar to the Shohei Ohtani injury in the playoffs, so it's probably about that timetable minus Shohei did to his left shoulder. I think Neto did it to his right shoulder. It's a good time for me to start pushing Denzer Guzman. I mean, I'm hoping that Denzer Guzman has a good spring, and we see him crack the opening day roster. Because the Angels, like we just talked about, are going to need some help at shortstop, and he's a very good defensive shortstop, and they're going to need some help at third base. And I want to say he can play a little bit of third base too. So that might be a pretty good stopgap there. As well, or maybe not even stopgaps. I think Denzer Guzman's the fifth infielder of the future here for the Angels in the very near future. So we might see that pretty quickly. He's still pretty young, but on the Neto train again, it's good to hear that he's got good news. We'll see when he plays in spring training, if he does play in spring training, and how he looks, because that's a big bat and a big player to be missing.
I mean, I'm guys, to be honest with you, I'm kind of knowing this year is going to be a rough year. I mean, now it depends on your definition of rough year, but I feel like it's going to be a year where we're talking between 60 and 70 wins again. That's just my belief. I'm having a hard time really being moved by any of this. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm getting used to this stuff. So I hate to ask to transition the conversation, but when you hear comments like mine, and you've seen we have much worse out there. We have much more pessimistic fans, even than Nate out there. Like Nate is genuinely pretty pessimistic a lot of time, and we've gotten worse than him. When we're talking about expectations for 2025, we're talking about these injuries, and we're talking about Rendon, we're talking about this and prospects coming up, and so on and so forth. What are the expectations that you guys think that fans should have?
That fans should have or that I have?
Well, you're more optimists, so let's try and mix them both. Like, give it a shot. What do you what if you're just trying to get through this season, looking towards the future?
So, so with the way that Perry, and I'll frame this in multiple directions, with the way that Perry and staff and Artie are talking about this team, fans should be expecting playoffs. And I can't you can't expect that this year especially with the roster. I'm looking at the options right here on my phone, and especially with what they're rolling out here right now. You can't expect playoffs by any means. My expectations this season, and it might be a little more optimistic than most, you got to be a 500. You got to be a 500 team, and you don't just only have to be a 500 team. You need to see good progress of your young players, your young core group of guys, the O'Hoppies, the Netos, the Shonowell, the Danas, those type of guys that you're going to rely on in 2026 and beyond to win you 90 plus games that season. So it's two-part answer. You want a 500 season, which is 20 games better than they were last year, or 18 games better, and you want to see these young guys progress. And I think those go hand in hand. And I've asked this question a lot about minor leagues. Like, what do you want to do in the minors? Do you want to win games, or do you want to see these players be really good? And I think we saw it a couple years ago where we had very, very good seasons in the minors by like Rocket City. I think maybe three teams made it to the playoffs. Um, and you see those teams develop really well. You know, you saw some players take big steps up. So I think again, it goes hand in hand. If the Angels are a 500 team this year, which I think they have a chance to do it. I mean, there's some room to work with there. I think they have a chance to be a 500 team for sure. Those young core group of guys need to develop and need to play better than they have in the past. They need to take that next step up. So again, hand in hand, two answers to your question there. I want to see young players play well, and I want to see the Angels be a 500 team.
Okay, Nate.
He said it nicer than I will. 500 or bust. Like Perry, this
Well,
is
so
on you,
you
right?
say it this way, Nate, because you hate Perry.
I don't hate Perry. I,
Yes, you
I want
do.
to see you like if you're gonna sit here every offseason and say like, trust me, I know what I'm doing. We're going to be good. And every season it is trash. Like he has the worst record of any GM in the last 15, 20 years, any Angel GM in the last 15, 20 years. And we hate on Jerry DePoto, we hate on Billy, we hate on Stolman. Like you can go back and yes, you can sit here and be like, oh, the Angels developed better. It doesn't matter. Like his job is to put a winning baseball team on the field. And he sits here every offseason and goes, you know what? I've done it. I have figured it out. I have put a winning baseball team on the field. And we look up in May and we go, you know what? This team will be lucky to win 70 games. Like that's what it has been with Perry. So for him, we just gave him a contract extension. He has sat here and said, like, I have a young core group of guys that are going to be good, and we have guys that are brought in to help them be good. This team has got to be a 500 team. Otherwise, it is a failure by the Angels organization. And that might not be realistic with the team that's like, you might sit here and, you can look at the Pacoda standings and things like that and be like, it's not realistic for this team to be 500. Well, then stop telling us that this team is a playoff team and stop telling us that you have built this unbelievable whatever he says. Because I said it in the offseason. I know you guys agreed with me. You have to go into the season with knowing that Anthony Rendon is not going to play, with knowing that Mike Trout is not going to play. And if you get production out of those guys, fantastic. And if you look at the opening day roster, they did not do that. So it's a organizational failure unless he goes 500.
But just to make sure I clarify, is that the expectation that fans should have them?
Absolutely. I mean, this is his fourth year. Like,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
put up or shut up time. This is year
So,
4.
uh, listen,
Like,
it,
I-
you gonna go, Nate? I mean, Jared, I have thoughts, but maybe you don't want to hear them at this point because
no,
I thought Nate was gonna be the pessimist.
you're good. You're good. No, no, just on the Perry standpoint, not to like defend him or anything like that. You, how many how many bad
We
contracts
talked about this.
how many bad contracts did he have? I put out there what's the worst contract in like previous Angels years, and like Perry was not the signee of all those contracts, but was the guy who was here. Like, I mean, minus Josh Hamilton, but Albert Pujols was on the team, strapped with a lot of money there. Justin Upton was on the team, strapped with a lot of money there. Anthony Rendon was on the team, strapped with a lot of money there. Mike Trout, for all intents and purposes, in the Perry Minasian era, has kind of been a failure of a contract. Unfortunately, I love Mike Trout, but it's been an unfortunate failure of a contract because he hasn't played very much in the Perry Minasian era. So not to push this conversation in a different direction, but like, I mean, that's a lot of money that Perry Minasian unfortunately has been strapped with and hasn't been able to spend. And now we just talked about Anthony Rendon being out for possibly the whole season, $35 million down the drain that could be going elsewhere. And Nate, I know you're going to point out Tyler Anderson. You're going to point out all these
Yep.
bad
You already
contracts
knew,
that
like,
he's done. I
you
know.
gave up a second round pick for Tyler Anderson. Like, there are things that he could have done better. And Artie Moreno said, "Hey, go get Trey Turner." And he goes, "No, I'm going to do this better." Like, again, fans, we talked about this last time. I said in the comments, tell me if Jared always has Perry's back, and this is just proving that my last point was correct last time. So, thank
All
you
right, hold
for
on.
proving me correct.
That's fine.
So,
That's fine.
oh, I just want to, you guys know I'm going to be good for historical knowledge, right? The last time the Angels finished at 500 or better was in 2015. They've won 80 games twice since then, 27, 2018. This roster on paper doesn't even match up to the 2021 team that won 77 games. I would argue it doesn't match up with 2022 and 23. So if we're talking about the expectation should be 500, I think you're on marijuana. I really do. Okay. And I don't mean that to be pessimistic. So I'm going to turn around because my view of expectations is not about the wins because I think this is going to be a bad baseball team. I want to see the youth movement. I want to see guys getting games and I want to see them develop. And that's actually where I think Perry Manassian's biggest failures are. You know, he came from an organization, the Atlanta Braves, that was known for developing players, developing talent. That's where he came from. And that was my expectation when he was brought in was to develop a farm system and get guys developed. And we really haven't seen a whole lot of that. They've developed players. They haven't developed stars yet. And so for me, in order for this to me be a successful season, I'm not worried about the record. So for those of you who are like, Derek's being a pessimist, hater. No, I've already acknowledged it's gonna be a bad baseball team. Give me a baseball team that shows a flash of life for the future. Give me players who show that they belong there and are developing, and I'm gonna be happy this year. Oh, and by the way, just for sides and giggles, their bobblehead lineup is the best bobblehead lineup that's been in 20 years. I just wanted to point that out. Every year was Mike Trout or Ohtani and nothing else. So I just wanted to point that's some optimism, right? So I mean, I'm sorry if it comes across as being ultimately negative by saying it's not a 500 team. They're just not. But if you show you're moving in the right direction with player development, that's all I've ever wanted out of Perry Minasian. That's why he was brought in. If you make that happen, then I'm gonna be happier. I know. I just don't believe. I think you're on. I think you're on something if you think they finish 500 this year. But give me player development. So. I went off topic with that a little bit. It wasn't on the agenda, but I just felt like it because I'm hosting the show and I don't care if Jared gets mad at me. So, last thing was Robert Stevenson. I, Nate just doesn't even give me a reaction anymore.
I'm
Robert
fine.
Stevenson, not ready, expect to be on ready for opening day. Besides that, I have nothing else for you guys. Any closing thoughts, Nate?
There was no shot he was being ready for opening day. I mean, he had TJ a couple months into last year. Like, even if everything went perfectly he's not ready by opening day. He came out and said his expectation is to be ready by July, early July. I would bet that no matter what, he's back after the All-Star break. That's just my guess. There's no reason to bring him back July 10th and hope that he pitches one game before the All-Star break. He'll probably come back after the All-Star break, and that's when you'll get him back. Yeah, and hopefully in hopefully he can pitch well and go into the next year of being like, hey, this is our seventh inning guy, because he's definitely not an eighth or ninth inning guy.
Jared?
Baseball.
It is beautiful to have it back. Even if it's not a great year, it's still baseball. All right, guys, follow us on X at Talking Halos. Follow me at DC Paul. Follow Nate, Nate Green 34, and Jared at Jared_Tims on X. We're out of here. Have a great one.